I have the pleasure to invite Professor Ivan Zimroth from Queen's College, the City University of New York, to make her contribution.
Thank you. Can I close this so you can see me?
Yeah.
I have no book to offer you. You'll be surprised to hear. Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Okay. I've been working on what are called Jewish heritage issues for about 10 years. In particular with the Lithuanian government and also with Jewish institutions, especially in New York City and in Washington, D.C. So I have a story to tell you about that, and I apologize actually in advance because I know that one or two of you in the audience today have heard this story. And is that better? Yes? Okay. There was a new ambassador from Lithuania to the United States about 10, 11 years ago, Vygantas Ušackas. When he arrived in the U.S., he came to I live in New York City, he came to my apartment in New York City. And we were obviously drinking a lot of very good Gediminas Lithuanian vodka. And he said to me, Evan, teach me kosher. So we went into my kitchen and I showed him, these are the meat dishes, these are the dairy dishes, and this is why we do what we do, and so on. And he was fascinated by it, and he learned it very quickly. And to my great surprise, he went back to the embassy in Washington, D.C., and he koshered it. He invited Chabad in, and they came in with their blowtorches, and they did everything with the pots and the pans and all of that, and he told me, I was shocked. At some point, a few months after that, he had a barbecue in the backyard. And he called me and he said, what can I serve at this barbecue and how do I do it? So I said, well, you have to serve salmon. And I told him, you have to have paper plates and a certain kind of barbecue and be sure that you use plastic spoons and forks and so on, and this particular kind of utensil. And I brought a bottle of kosher vodka to the event. And so he did that. We were all sitting in the garden and they were cooking, barbecuing the food. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, dinner is served. This is the steak, and over here, right over here, this is the kosher salmon. And I happened to be sitting with the reporter from the New York Times, the head of the Moscow bureau, and he turned to me in great surprise, and he said, what is this? He said, 60 years ago they were murdering us, now they're serving us kosher food. But it's true. And I would have to say, as Ambassador Asta said at the very beginning, the Lithuanian government, almost from the beginning, as it became a new country after Soviet occupation, but accelerated to at a great pace for the last 10 years, really. The Lithuanian government has become more and more kosher. Asta has outlined a number of the programs, Holocaust education, a lot of other kinds of education on Jewish issues, cultural programming, restitution, which was passed, I believe, in, and Faina, if she's still here, can talk about that because she was very active in the restitution negotiations and agreements, but it was ratified in 2010, I believe it was, in December 2010. And the restitution agreements that were passed then allocate, I think about, I don't know exactly what it is in dollars or sterling, but a great deal of money, especially for a government in the middle of the 2008 financial crash, to continue the work of Jewish institutions in Lithuania. I think that's absolutely critical and a linchpin to any kind of, to moving forward. Now, I've been asked to speak today in particular about something called the Sunflower Project, which comes out of Washington, D.C. and New York City, which is a very optimistic grassroots effort at Lithuanian Jewish reconciliation through two particular venues. One is a youth exchange of Jewish and non-Jewish kids, presumably to take place in Lithuania and in Israel. And the second part of it is cultural programming in musical concerts and art exhibits. The youth exchange program actually hasn't really taken place yet, and I hope it does. It will probably be inaugurated mostly by the current ambassador to Israel, Darius Degutis, who's a very activist ambassador, and has promoted all kinds of exchanges between Israel and Lithuania, agricultural, information technology, economics, and in fact has started the airline service between Tel Aviv and Vilnius, which has been very successful. The cultural programming is taking place though. There was a concert called Songs from the Vilna Ghetto, both in Washington, D.C., and then also at the Center for Jewish History in New York City, sponsored by EVO, the 1925 Lithuanian archival organization. It was very well received, and to my mind, I mean, I'm a little cautious about the idea of songs from the Vilna Ghetto, if people were into the Vilna Ghetto in order to sing. But the concert did provide an opportunity for people from at the ambassadorial level, for people from the Lithuanian government to state what is, I think, very, very true and very touching and meaningful. And that is that they're very, very committed to, and here I don't exactly have a verb for it. You can't restore Jewish culture, and you can't revive Jewish culture. It was totally annihilated, almost totally annihilated, as many of the speakers have been saying. So there's no real verb to say what you do about this Jewish culture, but it's very important to keep alive its memory, to comprehend it, to honor it, and insofar as it can possibly be done, to educate people about it and to incorporate it not so much into the Jewish narrative, which we know about, and we have a lot of information about it, but to incorporate it into the Lithuanian narrative. It is Lithuania's history to have a very vibrant and very, very pluralistic Jewish culture. And we hope we do hope that is going to happen. And it is happening more and more, as Asta has been saying. Now, when the Lithuanian government, or members of the Lithuanian government, make these statements, of course they're controversial. But my sense of it is that, especially under Prime Minister Kubilius, or I'm sorry to say, soon to be ex-Prime Minister Kubilius, probably. Well, I know. He has this kind of programming has accelerated. He is most passionately committed to Jewish Lithuanian outreach, and he's invested a vast amount of his personal and his political capital to this idea. And I hope that he is actually very fully recognized for his efforts. I know that the government in Israel, for example, is considering and will be considering some kind of very official honor for him, to honor him for all of his efforts at the restitution agreement, and for promoting different kinds of reconciliation efforts. Now, back to the Sunflower Project. The Sunflower Project has been vociferously attacked by the Jewish, not by Lithuanian anti-Semites, but by the Jewish press in the United States. And I think, as someone said earlier, when you have two Jews, you have 5 opinions. That's just the way it is. So the press has actually sort of castigated the project, and so it means it's slowed down. And there are other issues, as we just heard from the last speaker, that will always, of course, backtrack and slow us down in any kind of an effort. One of them was the case that was just mentioned of the head of the provisional government in 1941 who was reinterred in Kaunas. Or there's a march or something like that. There's a piece something in the press. And so we do move forward, and at the same time, every now and again, we move back. But when you have a case like the Brzaitis case, which is you mentioned in your last speech of the head of the provisional government who allegedly inaugurated or endorsed the ghetto at Kaunas. Obviously, it's terrible. Obviously, that should not have happened. Obviously, the government should not have in any way collaborated with it or had anything to do with it. But that being said, once it was done, it became an opportunity, it has to be an opportunity, to call again and again and again for an authentic, accurate historical narrative. And that's what this conference today and tomorrow is going to be about. It's going to be about opening up the archives, about speaking honestly about all of these very complicated, controversial issues, about finding real historical documentation for who signed what, under what circumstances, what are all of the countervailing problems and politics and tendencies. The title of this conference is absolutely accurate. There are no simple stories, and there are no simple solutions either. But this kind of conference will provide a real historical record. It will provide accurate and comprehensive historical research. And this is in a region where, first of all, you not only were the Jews annihilated, but you also have a whole long decades of planned historical amnesia under the Soviets. Once that historical amnesia was lifted, what we have here is what Francois was talking about in his talk before. We have a whole series of competing historiographies, of competing historical narratives. And it is not so easy. It's not that one historical narrative has to take precedence, but they all have to be given their proper and historical and accurate viewing. So I think that this conference is going to be very, very important in widening the conversation about these competing historical narratives. I want to end in a kind of this different way, and that is I follow tweets. Especially, there's a man who is at the Lithuanian embassy in Washington, D.C., Rolandas Kačinkas, who tweets almost every day on Lithuanian issues. Most of them are about energy issues, obviously really important issues for Lithuania. They're about energy, they're about basketball, the dream team. But every now and again, you hear a very interesting kind of Jewish tweet. So on the 4th of October, the tweet was this. Tomorrow, I'm going to begin with September. On the 14th of September, he tweeted, Shana Tova, greetings to my Jewish friends. That was obviously the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. 5773 is better than 2012. Now, I like that tweet very much, not only for its greeting, but because he just simply used the Hebrew, Shana Tova. And it was very normal. He didn't translate it. He just assumed that anyone reading this tweet would know what he was talking about, and that everyone within the Lithuanian community who follows his blog would know what he's talking about as well. And then on the 4th of October, he tweeted, tomorrow is the 215th year anniversary since the passing of the Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest Jewish men to have walked the earth over this past few centuries. Again, a very beautiful sentiment. 200 and whatever it is, 120 characters, but a very critical piece of understanding and comprehension of Lithuanian Jewish history, which in some ways is the same history with very, very deep divisions. There's no question about that. But it is still Lithuanian Jewish history and not only Jewish history. Thank you.